Welcome. I hope you are having a wonderful night. Tonight, I will be telling some terrifyingly true stories. Make sure to leave your feedback on the comments, as I want to make this the best experience for you guys. I hope you are warm and ready. Let's begin. My friend and I are still trying to process exactly what we saw the other day. We've talked it through countless times, trying to logically figure out how this was possible. Hopefully, someone on here can give us some thoughts and ideas as to what actually happened. So, I recently purchased a small bass boat, and my first mate Legov and I have been super eager to explore the lake and its islands, as well as learn the fishing around it. We're new to Tennessee. Yesterday, on the 4th of July, we decided to go fishing in this very secluded part of the lake. We named No Man's Land because of the low-hanging bridge that prevents boaters from entering the section. My boat can make it underneath because of how small it is, but I've never seen another boat in there. We decided to go deeper into the cove than we've ever been before. As we're slowly trolling down the lake, the path before us splits into 3 forks, and I ask which fork we should take. Legov immediately says, the middle one, so we continue straight as the water changes from a large lake to a narrow river-like path. This is where a chain of events happened in quick succession, and we've talked through it after the fact to try and recall the order of how this went down. First, we heard a weird vocal noise coming from the woods beyond the shoreline, and we both tensed up and felt very uneasy. What was that? Legov asked. A dog, I said, as that was the first thing that came to mind. I don't think that was a dog, Legov answered immediately. Then we saw a bird high above us, perching on a branch, staring at us. Maybe it was that bird, Legov said. Yeah, maybe, I answered. I'm not sure when it got into my hand, but at some point, I drew my pistol and held it down at my side. Legov held the fishing bow. We both had a very weird feeling as we drifted down the river. Eyes glued to the bank, we came to a rotting pine tree that had fallen and was now half submerged in the water, sitting on the shoreline. Then it happened. We hear a very loud, heavy-footed animal running through the woods, getting closer to the water. At first, I thought it was a deer, as it was almost prancing. But as it got closer and louder, we both realized it was, in fact, not a deer. It was a very large, jet black canine. My brain thought, oh, it must be a coyote, but this was much bigger, like a huge German shepherd. And it was fast, like a black shadow, leaping through the trees and quickly approaching the bank that we were floating across from. It didn't seem to have any texture and details, though, almost like it was flat and blurry. We couldn't see fur or its face and eyes, just the outline of its body and tall wolf, like ears, but it was obviously the body of a canine. Adrenaline started rushing through us, and my brain raced, thinking we were about to have to defend ourselves. It almost looked as if it were charging at us, but it was zigzagging and dodging through the trees toward the exact portion of shoreline we were floating past. We were scared, but the 15 feet of water between our boat and the shoreline gave us some confidence. It would have to swim out to us, and I didn't see that as likely. It continued its leaping through the woods and quickly reached our portion of the shoreline. Watch for it to come back up, I whispered. I had never heard of canines being able to submerge themselves underwater, but here it was happening right in front of our eyes. We waited. Nothing. Silence. Just the subtle sound of the ripples it made slowly dissipating. We waited about 20 more seconds and still nothing. It was almost as if the entire forest had shut off. Silence. Our eyes were glued to the fallen pine tree. It dove under. Maybe it's just standing in the water under the tree, Legov says. We get the courage to troll the boat a little closer to inspect the tree. But there's nothing, no sign of anything. At this point, we're in complete shock. Stunned. It's gone. How could it be gone? How does something that big just vanish? especially a huge creature like that. After 30 more seconds of silence, Legov breaks it with you. Saw what I saw, right? A shiver flashes down my spine. All of it, I reply. Really though? What the fuck was that? Legov said. I replied, I think we saw a demon. And we both nervously laughed. We stay floating near the shoreline, in shock for at least another 10 minutes, hoping for a sign that we weren't crazy. Legov scoured the waters, looking to see if it would come up for air. It never did. How the hell could a big black wolf disappear into thin air? Or water for that matter? Being skeptics, there has to be a logical explanation to what we saw, but we can't find one. If it had just splashed the water and gotten out again. 1. We would have seen it walk away in whatever direction, and 2. We would have heard it as anything putting weight on the leaves makes a loud noise. But it was just silence. The loudest of silences. We live in Middle Tennessee, if that helps at all. We're still a little shaken up by this. This is 100% true. We are not bullshitting you. Any insight would be much appreciated. In one majestic, fluid motion, it leaped off the shore and dove into the water, right under the half-submerged pine tree in front of us. Stomp, 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 slomps, stomp, splash. That was it. We held our breath as we waited to hear it swim or move toward us. Small ripples reached our boat from the splash. After the fact, Legov swears the splash should have been much bigger for a creature that size. Before I explain the light post man, I need to provide some background information. I live in a rural area of the United States. I don't mean farmland. I mean thick woodland, no neighbors, and a 30-minute drive to the nearest store. Yeah, rural. Anyway, our roads are decrepit and flanked by trees so thick that you can't see through them. It was on these roads where my friends and I would carelessly ride bikes and skateboards. Which brings me to the matter at hand, the light post man. I was in my mid-teens and had just had a really fun day with a friend. We skateboarded to the closest town, bought Mountain Dews and ice cream, then skateboarded around town until dusk. Admittedly, I urged my friend that we should head back sooner. However, I gave in when he protested. By the time we reached the end of my road, it was completely dark out. The moon was very bright though, so we could see the road very well. Oddly, no vehicles drove by the whole time, and my friend and I were excited to have the road to ourselves. We reached about halfway when we approached the gravel pit on my road. The gravel pit had a single, flickering light, post with an orangish glow. We had just passed the gravel pit when we heard a male voice shout, "Hey, behind us!" I froze. My friend hopped off his board and headed towards the gravel pit. I reluctantly followed close behind. He abruptly stopped at the edge of the road leading into the gravel pit. It was then that I could see the source of the voice. A man was leaning against the light post. I could swear there was no one there when we had passed by, although I hadn't specifically checked. And the closest house was my own. Fearlessly, my friend took a step forward and asked the stranger, "What's up? What are you boys doing?" The stranger replied in an unsettling tone. "We're skateboarding," my friend said casually, while raising his board slightly in response. "Oh yeah," the man said, taking a step forward. "We were just heading back," my friend said. I could hear nervousness in his voice now. "Oh yeah," the man continued. "Where are you going?" He took another step. His posture was definitively menacing now. That was enough. I had a sudden and overwhelming feeling that I was in immediate danger. An instinct, I suppose you could say. I began to skateboard away into the darkness. My friend, realizing that I noped out of there, promptly followed behind. I heard the man's voice booming behind us. "Hey, come back." But we just went faster. I repeatedly checked behind us to see if we were being followed. Thankfully, we were not. It wasn't until later that I realized that I had never seen the man's face. All I saw was his silhouette. His face was conveniently hidden in shadow due to the light post being directly behind him. It was unsettling to think about that at the time. It is still unsettling to think about. Why was the man there? Where had he come from? Why was he interested in us? I was on an assignment for the Army, making my way up from San Antonio, Texas, to Tacoma, Washington. It was a long drive, and they gave me 6 days to report to my new unit, but I didn't mind. I love road trips. There's nothing like the freedom of exploring the world by yourself. The first day of my journey, I planned to get as much driving in as possible so I could spend a few days in Utah, a sort of mini vacation, you could say. This was January, and the days were short, so maximizing the amount of daylight I had was crucial. I got up extra early that morning, carried the last of my bags out to my Corolla, signed out of my old unit, and hit the road at roughly 5 a.m. It was an amazing day. I saw the landscape transform around me as I headed farther west than I had ever been in my life. From the San Antonio metropolitan area to the savannas of the Edwards Plateau, to the pancake, flat farmland of the Great Plains region, America's breadbasket. Finally, the farms opened up into prairie, and I saw the Welcome to New Mexico, the land of enchantment sign. Now I was really in the middle of nowhere. Continuing on US. Route 380, I eventually found myself in Roswell. I could have gotten a few more hours of driving in and made it to Albuquerque, but I figured since I was in no rush, I might as well see what Roswell had to offer. Who knows if I would get a chance to visit again. The next day, I continued to Albuquerque, then westward on Interstate 40. By the time I reached Gallup and started northbound on Route 491. I still had 2 hours of driving left before crossing the border into Colorado, and another 45 minutes before I would get to Cortez. My plan stopped for the night. However, my daylight was already running out, as sunset was at 6 p.m. I got Starbucks and refreshed myself for the final stretch. It was supposed to be easy, just a straight shot. But looking back on it now, I figured that had I decided to stop in Albuquerque instead of Roswell the night previous, I would have already been in Colorado by now, and possibly be making my way into Utah. I would have saved myself from what was waiting for me on that desolate highway. Route 490. One stretched far into the Navajo Nation. On either side of me were endless expanses of prairie bookended by dark indigo mountains on the horizon. To my left, the sky glowed a faint orange, purple, the light slowly dying down like smoldering embers in a fire, until finally plunging the land into darkness. Every now and then, I would see the forlorn headlights of another car passing by, which gave me a bit of relief that I wasn't alone. I also had my road trip playlist on to keep me company and call me ironic, but Hotel California was playing. After passing the small, lonely town of Newcomb, the next piece of civilization would be Shiprock. However, between the two was a 36-mile stretch of absolute nothingness, an abyss I had to cross. I was not ready for what I was about to witness. After several miles, and having not seen another car on the road, I saw something strange emerge from the horizon. Barely lit by the moonlight, I thought it was a road sign at first. Then, as AI came closer, I realized it was a person, walking on the shoulder of the road, heading in my direction. I squinted, trying my hardest to focus on the figure. In the darkness, I could tell they were wearing a poncho of some sort, with long black hair flowing down past their chest. Who could be walking out here? All alone, at night, I thought. Whoever it was, they had no lights, no reflectors, no strobes of any kind to signal to passing cars that they were there, and they walked on the pavement, dangerously close to oncoming traffic. I pulled to the left a bit, giving them a wide berth. Suddenly, my stereo cut out, as if I had turned it off. The screen went completely dark, and my phone disconnected from Bluetooth. While this was unusual, it certainly did happen from time to time, so I thought nothing of it. As I approached, I saw the person raise their right arm, as if to flag me down and hitch a ride. Oh no. No, no, no. No, I thought. There's no way that's happening, buddy. As my headlights swept by, I realized it was a man. Dressed in a button-up shirt, a wool poncho, jeans, and cowboy boots. His large belt buckle glinted as the lights passed him. But in that split second, I realized with abject shock that not only were his eyes painfully wide open, but they seemed to be tracking me. Somehow, he was able to see me through the glare of my headlights and look me dead in the eyes, not breaking contact until I passed. I was shaken for a bit, but my nerves gradually subsided. My stereo abruptly turned back on, and my music continued playing. I brushed everything off as simply my imagination, the darkness and the shadows playing tricks on my mind. Besides, the man was behind me. I figured he must have been drunk. Indian reservations sadly had high rates of alcoholism. I looked in my rearview mirror. He was gone. I couldn't see him. Maybe he's too far behind me. No, that couldn't be. No, that couldn't be. It must be too dark. Maybe. I drove on, trying to figuring out what had just happened, but at the same time, forcing myself not to think about it. Just when I thought I had moved on, I saw another shape in the distance. Getting closer, I realized it was another figure. Another person walking alone at night. There's no way. They walked along the shoulder of the road, swaying back and forth. Slowly, I could make out that this person was also wearing a poncho. Then I saw what looked like long black hair, reaching down past the chest. No, there's no way. It was the man, the same man. But how? The man raised his arm again, trying to flag me down. What did this guy want? I kept up my pace with no intention of stopping for any reason. Just like last time, my stereo turned off again. Suddenly, the man leapt out onto the road, arms waving frantically. I swerved into the left lane, narrowly avoiding him. In my headlights, I noticed he had the same wide-eyed look, his gaze locked onto mine. I also saw that his clothes did not look as they did the first encounter. Once they were clean, if not well, worn, but now they were soiled and tattered, rags barely hanging onto his withered frame. His hair was wild and unkempt, with clods of dried dirt stuck in the locks, but his eyes remained the same. My heart nearly burst through my chest at the sudden shock. Hyperventilating, I slowed down and glanced into the rearview mirror to make sure he was all right. Nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to see. The man was running. He was sprinting towards me. I centered the wheel and accelerated, hoping to get as much distance from him as possible. But as I continued to speed up, so did he. Faster and faster I drove, but every time I looked in the mirror, I would still see him right behind me, perfectly keeping pace, his body tinted red by my taillights. I could feel my temples throbbing and my hands getting slick with sweat on the steering wheel. I was sick to my stomach. There's no way. I looked forward, hoping to see a faint glimmer of light from the town ahead, but I was still too far away. I looked back at the rearview mirror. The man was gone. I should have been relieved, but I knew better. Where did he go? I looked around, hoping to regain a visual on him. I couldn't see anything. Taking a deep breath, I refocused on the road, but kept my guard up. Just keep driving, I told myself. Only a few more miles to go. Out of the corner of my right eye, I saw something. Another shape. It wasn't the man. At least I didn't think so. I glanced over, bracing myself for whatever was going to meet my sight. It looked like an animal. Some kind of animal, though I couldn't make out exactly what it was. Under the moonlight, I could see it running alongside my car, its forelimbs reaching out in long strides, its back undulating like a dog. Closer and closer it came. The closer it was, the more of it I could see, little by little. Then I noticed its limbs were far too long for its body. Its body was too short. It had no tail. The head was oddly round, and from it came a trail of long black hair. I slammed my foot on the gas, pushing my car's engine harder than it had ever been pushed before. By now, I was clocking well over 110 miles per hour. But this creature, it kept up. It wasn't phased. It simply ran faster and faster to match my speed. Just what was this thing? How could anyone or anything run this fast? The entity seemed to have endless stamina. Just how long could it keep this up? Just how much faster could it go? Soon, my car would hit its top speed. And then what? How long could it maintain that before breaking down? It wouldn't be long until my engine overheats. But regardless, I would eventually run out of gas. And when I do, what would happen if that thing got me? At 120 miles per hour, my car had reached its limit. This was the fastest I could go. But the creature continued its pursuit. My temperature gauge was approaching the red, and so was my tachometer. I couldn't keep this up any longer. Suddenly, like the beacon of a lighthouse on a tumultuous sea, the first light of shiprock came into view. It was close, so close. If I could just go a little longer, I could make it into town. To safety, I pressed on. I fixed my eyes on the lights, growing brighter on the horizon. They bloomed outwards, glimmering in the night air. Though it was a small town, it was a sight for sore eyes in my situation. Looking in my periphery, I saw the undulation of the creature's spine as it kept pace with my car. But now, it was slipping away, steering farther and farther from the road. It suddenly hit me just how hard my heart was beating. Beads of sweat dripped down my face. I looked over. The creature was gone. But this time, the feeling of dread had also gone with it. My stereo once again turned back on. And as my music resumed, I breathed a deep sigh of relief. I let off the accelerator. The man, the creature, whatever it was finally gone for good. Having white-knuckled the steering wheel the whole time without realizing it, my hands were extremely sore. But I was glad to have made through. A week later, I told another soldier in my unit about what I had experienced. Being originally from Albuquerque, she was familiar with the Native American legends of the Southwest. The conversation steered toward a certain creature that she would not dare speak the name of. She also told me that the highway I took was well known for all sorts of paranormal phenomena. Google what Route 491 used to be called, and everything will make sense. Be careful out there.